With the news that the Acolyte Season 2 has been cancelled, or at the very least postponed, it brings to an end a series which left a lot of questions. The era between the High Republic novels and the Phantom Menace had been a lost repository of canonical lore which could have been filled by the Acolyte. After the season divided Star Wars fans, it was first reported on August 19, 2024 that the show would be cancelled following declining viewership and review bombing. Though attempts are being made for a revival, for the time being, it still leaves us with an unfinished story arc with untapped potential, from Plagueis to Yoda to Vernestra. So what if we could save the Acolyte and create our own Season 2? Here is just one interpretation of a potential Season 2. The story begins where Season 1 ended, which was on the world of Brenock, where Osha and Qimir are continuing to observe the serenity yet harshness of the planet. Qimir began to describe the characteristics of each wave that battered against the cliffs, and compared it to all of Osha's emotions on Brenock when she heard the betrayal of Sol. Osha's anger began to build when she was reminded of the events on Brenock, and taking Qimir's lightsaber, she ignited the weapon and aggressively slashed the nearest rock formation. Qimir's face barely registered a flicker of emotion as the debris scattered around him, as he also contemplated what had happened on Brenock. Even with his Cortosis helmet, he had been defeated by Master Sol in their lightsaber duel, and had it not been for the twins, he would now be in a Jedi holding cell on his way to Coruscant. Given how much he enjoyed defeating the other Jedi, he needed to spend more time fine-tuning his abilities, worried to face more Jedi, and especially his old master. Unknown to the master and the apprentice, the figure of Darth Plagueis both sensed and observed their ruminations, and from their previous visit, he sensed that Osha had taken further steps to embrace the dark side. Though Plagueis wore his usual inscrutable expression on his face, he was secretly satisfied by the progress, and he considered that one of them could make for a suitable apprentice. That was in the future, as for now, he turned away from the two Force users, and jumping down to the other side of the cliff face, he raised his hand to create a partition in a small reservoir, and Plagueis walked into the open space, towards a previously hidden small airlock. As the water flowed back into its normal position, Plagueis descended the turbo lift and entered a large underground complex. This was no ordinary complex, but a Cortosis mine buried several miles below Brenock's surface, and Plagueis now turned into Higo Damask II of the Damask Holdings. The turbo lift doors opened when he reached his destination, and he was greeted by his master Darth Tenebrous, otherwise known as Ruges Gnome. No words were necessary between the master and the apprentice, as Plagueis merely nodded his head, and placing envirosuits over their heads, they entered into the factory. As one of their Cyborg Galactica designed droids informed them of their progress, it also showed that there had been an anonymous transaction, and Plagueis knew that it was Qimir purchasing parts for his helmet. When the two Sith eventually concluded their tour, the percentage of usable Cortosis in the ore was up to their required standards, and they walked through to their underground base. The scorching surface of the planet made it difficult for a base on the outside, so planted between two canyons, the base of the Sith only had a discreet exit to the outdoors. The interior of the base was a spectacular area, illuminated by spotlights from the towering ceiling, with Sith statues of former Sith Lords lining the walls, and these were draped by red flags. Even though the Sith were intent on hiding their identity, Tenebrous saw these lavish decorations as annoying his apprentice, who was skeptical of the Sith of yesteryear. On the level of the floor was a large laboratory where the two Sith conducted their experiments, enclosed in a transparent steel airlock cage. Tenebrous utilised his mathematical skills in bit sciences, but it was Plagueis' natural abilities in midichlorians which were responsible for much of their advancements. Allowing Plagueis to be distracted by his work had allowed for Tenebrous to work on executing the Sith grand plan without the fear of being betrayed, but now the result of one of these experiments was calling to question if Plagueis should be allowed to continue his work. In what Plagueis had called his prototype alpha experiment, the Sith apprentice had inadvertently created the twins of May and Osha over 2 decades ago, and now they were becoming a threat to the Sith's schemes. The twins' master Qimir in particular had been too open in his quest for freedom, and in the eyes of Tenebrous, he had significantly miscalculated and overestimated both his and the Jedi's abilities. Over the past 200 years, the Sith had noticed that the Jedi had been under threat from forces far inferior to the Sith, but they did not have the numbers to defeat them so soon. Perhaps it was time to recruit their 2 guests, before they could make a mistake that would undo their carefully crafted plans. As the 2 Sith worked on a plan to manipulate Qimir and Osha, events were much more hectic on Coruscant as Master Vernestra explained what had happened to May on Brenock. As she wove her story of how Sol had been a rogue Jedi and the one behind the deaths on Brenock, Yoda knew she had just talked to Senator Rayancourt and asked her to tell him what she had not told the Senator. The Mirialan Master looked hesitantly between the door and the Jedi Grand Master, and she decided to partially reveal that May had been exposed to darkness but had forgotten it, as her pride stopped her revealing the identity of her former student. Yoda could sense pain and regret in the words of Master Ro, and it seemed that even after nearly 100 years, the disaster of the Starlight Beacon was one of the scars that remained. Allowing the Mirialan to leave his quarters, Yoda also got to his feet, and together they joined the other members of the council to bury Master Sol's team. As their caskets were being lowered and sealed, Yoda was thinking about the carefully selected words of Master Ro, and he deduced that she was trying to protect the Jedi by not exposing the full story to the Senate. After the burial was complete, Yoda discovered that Master Ro's efforts had become somewhat obsolete, as a transmission arrived from Chancellor Drellick, asking him to meet him in his office. Yoda prepared himself for the inevitable and difficult conversation, and taking a Veil speeder to the Senate building, he is guided by the Senate guards into a turbolift, which directly accessed the Chancellor's office. Once seated opposite Chancellor Drellick, the Tarsan politician brought up Senator Rayancourt's scathing analysis of the Jedi Order's lack of transparency, and he told Yoda that they would be doing a review of the Jedi. A group of intimidating Senate officials entered the room, and Yoda diplomatically accepted the inquest of the Senate, before rushing back to the Jedi Temple. Meeting with Master Ro once again, he gave her the opportunity to take a meditative retreat from the Jedi Order, and also allowed her to take May and her team to track down whatever had caused the darkness. Master Ro respectively bowed to Yoda, as she knew that he had just allowed her to investigate, albeit with a small time frame, without the interruption of the Senate. Though she had now received permission for a personal task, she did not know where to search for her old Padawan, and she began to regret not capturing him on Brenock. Knowing Qimir would double his efforts to ensure he was not found, she gathered a group of trusted Jedi investigators and checked the evidence they had found on Brenock. Through the SP4ISC analysis droid, they examined every mark in the forest and the fortress, and Master Ro begins to visualize the fights. Also deconstructing each of the lightsabers of the fallen Jedi, she noticed a common theme between Sol's team, and it was that their power vortex rings had all been mangled, which pointed to a form of electrocution. The robes of the Jedi had not been singed, so this ruled out a lightning attack, and it pointed to a piece of equipment or weapon that Qimir must have been wielding. Entering the Jedi archives, Master Ro divides her team to search for lightsaber resistant or damaging equipment. They compile a list containing the likes of Beskar, Frick and Cortosis. Even the entire Jedi Order combined would not be able to search the mines in the limited time she had been given, so she decided to look for other existing wielders of lightsaber resistant artifacts. One particular wielder called the Eye of the Mirialan, and they were a technological centric cult based on the planet of Barleth. Whilst Master Ro was organising her team for the journey, Tenebrous and Plagueis had started the latest of their experiments, using their Cortosis to try and create experimental droids, which they could sell to some of the subsidiaries of Damask Holdings. A small alarm flashed over the head of the entrance, and the 2 Sith are alerted to a movement above the surface. Quickly leaving their laboratory and ascending the turbolift, they see Qimir and Osha getting ready to leave the planet, and Tenebrous quietens Plagueis' request to place a tracking beacon, as the Bith had helped to design the ship, and therefore knew how to track its signature. As the modified Star Courier took into the skies, a protocol droid alerted the Sith to the news that the Jedi were coming under scrutiny from the Senate, and the review was about to take place. This was an opportunity for the Sith to try and diminish the reputation of the Jedi and place them under further control from the Senate, but also a risk, as they could be exposed in such a populated area. Plagueis reasoned that the Jedi were already distracted by Qimir and Osha, so entering Tenebrous' personally designed ship, they travelled to the heart of the Republic, which was Coruscant and the Galactic City. The Sith had mastered their abilities in force clouding, but never on such a scale, as they were now attempting to blend in with the majority of the Jedi Order, and after several days including bursts of meditation, they were ready for their mission. The Sith utilised small prototype spy droids to monitor the movements of the Senate officials conducting the review, as well as any senators who occasionally joined them out of curiosity, but their target was Chancellor Drellick.